What emotion do you feel when you're going to approach someone you're very attracted to and there's an extremely high probability that she's going to tell you to disappear? Right, exactly, absolutely, because it's a real judgment, right? It's like the best judgment is, well, I don't mind your physical presence, but your genes should definitely not survive another generation. Right, and that's sort of generally translated into, I think we should just be friends. When you can blow that off, and people do, and you have to because it's part of being polite and civilized, but, you know, let's make no mistake about it. It's Beauty and the Beast. And so it's because, well, there's no fun in taming someone who's already tame. And what makes you think you really want someone who's tame anyways? There's no interest in that. Plus, when chaos manifests itself, what makes you think that someone tame is going to be good for anything? Of course, females, they're more complicated, and that's exactly how it is. And it's no wonder, because their lives are more complicated. As a woman, I have fantasies about bad boys. Is this something I need to mature out of or realize in my sex life in different ways? Well, I can't say for sure because I don't know anything about your sex life, and I don't know anything about the fantasies. There was a nice study done a while back showing that, looking at the ratio of positive to negative emotional experiences that were most predictive of long-term relationship success. And the answer was, now obviously it depends on how you would measure an event and how you would measure positive and negative emotion. But that aside, the finding was something like, if you're in a relationship and you only have 5 positive interactions to 1 negative interaction, then the relationship will end. It's too negative. But if you have more than 11 positive interactions to 1 negative interaction, then it also ends. Why in the world would that be? Don't you want like 100 to 1 positive to negative interactions? And the answer to that is, what makes you think that you want a relationship so that you can be happy? Or at least happy moment to moment. I mean, I bet you there's not a person in this room who hasn't rejected someone because they were too nice to them. Something like that. Person's no challenge. You want someone who, you know, you can get along with them, but now and then they bite you and you think, oh, that's interesting. You're looking for someone that you have to contend with, who's going to push you beyond what you already are, and who's going to judge you harshly often for your limitations. You don't want someone who thinks you're perfect in your current form, partly because why would you want to go out with someone that deluded? Erich Neumann, famous student of Carl Jung, said, don't pretend to be better than you are. Now, he didn't mean don't try to be a moral person, don't try to improve yourself or any of that. He meant don't lie about what you are and what you want. And, you know, maybe you're ashamed of it. Well, maybe you should be, but maybe you shouldn't be. Agreeable people, especially if they're really agreeable, are so agreeable that they often don't even know what they want, because they're so accustomed to living for other people and to finding out what other people want and to trying to make them comfortable and so forth, that it's harder for them to find a sense of their own desires as they move through life. And one of the things I tell agreeable people, especially if they're conscientious, is say what you think. Tell the truth about what you think. There's going to be things you think that you think are nasty and harsh, and they probably are nasty and harsh, but they're also probably true. And you need to bring those up to the forefront and deliver the message. Okay, so agreeable people are compassionate and polite. What are disagreeable people like? They're tough-minded, they're blunt, they're competitive, and they won't do a damn thing they don't want to do. It's dominance behavior. And so for someone who's highly disagreeable, they look at the world as a place in which they can compete and win. If you ask a disagreeable person what he wants, say, or she wants, they'll tell you right away, this is what I want and this is how I'm going to get it. Not only will they tell you things you don't know, they'll also tell you how to see the world in ways that you don't see it. You should work on developing the skills and viewpoints that exist in the space opposite to your personality, because that's where you're fundamentally underdeveloped. And that way I think you can extend out your temperamental capability across a wider range. And to me, that's roughly equivalent as bringing a richer toolkit to each situation. You know, so if you're hyper extroverted, you should probably learn to shut up at parties now and then and listen just to see what's going on, to see if you can manage it. And if you're introverted, well, then you should learn how to speak in public and to learn how to go to parties without hiding in the corner and saying nothing to anyone. You know, and if you're agreeable, then you need to learn how to be disagreeable so people can't push you around. And if you're disagreeable, you need to learn how to be agreeable so that you're not an evil son of a, you know. So, and the same thing applies even in the conscientious domain. It's like if you're too conscientious, You need to learn to relax and let go a little bit. You might want to think about, if you're choosing a partner, is try not to choose someone who's too distant from you on the temperamental variables, because you're going to have a hard time bridging the gap. You know, it's hard for an introverted person and an extroverted person to coexist. And it's really hard for an orderly person and a disorderly person to coexist, because they will drive each other nuts. It's useful to know about your temperament so that you can negotiate the space with your partner as well. And I don't think you should try to find someone who's exactly the same as you, because then you don't have the benefits of the alternative viewpoint. But you got to watch it, because you may hit irreconcilable differences of various sorts. Maybe you've grown out of one or two of the stupid ideas that possessed you, or maybe you're possessed by an attraction to someone you can't control, or you can't control your eating behavior, or you're a pushover when it comes to interpersonal interactions because you're too agreeable, or you fly off the handle and fight, and none of this is really under your control. And so all of those things that manifest themselves not only in your behaviors but in your perceptions themselves, they tend to take on embodied form and use you as the vehicle for their activity. When you're thinking about something like anger, for example, think about how it works, because it's quite peculiar. What must someone generally do? How must someone generally act if you're going to be angry at them? They have to be irritating, right? They have to provoke you in some way. Well, the mere fact that you perceive what they're doing as irritating or provoking doesn't ensure that anyone else would have thought about it as irritating or provoking, or that that's what they meant, or that that's what's happening. And my point is, it's very important to think about these complexes of ideas as sub-personalities, because otherwise you really don't get what they're like. It's like you perceive the person as irritating. You might say, well, it's not me, it's you. It's not that I'm irritated by you, it's that you're irritating. And that, that's a very difficult thing to settle, because the reality is somewhere between the subjective and the objective, right? The point is that if you're possessed by an emotional state or a motivational state or an idea or some kind of complex, you'll see the world through its eyes. And then the facts reveal themselves to you through the lens of that particular set of ideas. You say, well, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week, and I'm not going to drink, and maybe there's this person I'm not going to associate with. And then you don't go to the gym, and you find that person and you go out and drink with them, and you think, what the hell's going on, You're not the sort of person that will do what you say. And so, what sort of person are you? Well, that's a psychoanalytic question. It's a deep one, because you're a peculiar thing. And there's parts of you that are really, really, really old. And the sort of naive you, the naive young you that you think of yourself as is like a little piece of flotsam in an ocean of complexity. And the ocean of complexity is you. And part of diving down into the depths is to start to understand what it means to be human. And whatever that means, it's the one thing you can say about it for sure is that it's bloody peculiar.